Now to continue reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Chapter 21. Goodbye, Violet. This gum, Mr. Wonka went on, is my latest, my greatest, my most fascinating invention. It's a chewing gum meal. It's that tiny little strip of gum lying there is a whole three-course dinner all by itself. What sort of nonsense is this? Said one of the fathers. My dear sir, cried Mr. Wonka, when I start selling this gum in the shops, it will change everything. It will be the end of all kitchens and all cooking. There will be no more marketing to do. No more buying of meat and groceries. There will be no knives and forks at mealtimes, no plates, no washing up, no garbage, no mess, just a little strip of Wonka's magic chewing gum. And that's all you'll ever need at breakfast, lunch, and supper. This piece of gum I've just made happens to be tomato soup, roast beef, and blueberry pie. But you can have almost anything you want. What do you mean it's tomato soup, roast beef, and blueberry pie? Said Violet Beauregarde. If you were to start chewing it, then that is exactly what you would get on the menu. It's absolutely amazing. You can actually feel the food going down your throat and into your tummy. And you can taste it perfectly, and it fills you up. It satisfies you. It's terrific. It's utterly impossible, said Veruca Salt. Just so long as it's gum, shouted Violet. Just so long as it's a piece of gum and I can chew it, then that's for me. And quickly she took her own world record piece of chewing gum out of her mouth and stuck it behind her left ear. Come on, Mr. Wonka, hand over this magic gum of yours and we'll see if this thing works. Now, Violet, said Mrs. Beauregarde, her mother, don't do anything silly, Violet. I want the gum, Violet said obstinately. What's so silly? I would rather you didn't take it, said Mr. Wonka. You see, I haven't got it quite right yet. There are still one or two things. Oh, to heck with it, said Violet, and suddenly, before Mr. Wonka could stop her, she shot out a fat hand and grabbed a stick of gum out of the little drawer and popped it into her mouth. At once, her huge, well-trained jaws started chewing away on it like a pair of tongs. Don't, said Mr. Wonka. Fabulous, shouted Violet. It's tomato soup. It's hot, creamy, and delicious. I can feel it running down my throat. Stop, said Wonka. The gum isn't ready yet. It's not right. Of course it's right, said Violet. It's working beautifully. Oh my, what lovely soup this is. Spit it out, said Mr. Wonka. It's changing, shouted Violet, chewing and grinning both at the same time. The second course is coming up. It's roast beef. It's tender and juicy. Oh boy, what a flavor. The baked potato is marvelous, too. It's got a crispy skin and it's all filled with butter inside. But how interesting, Violet, said Miss Beauregarde. You are a clever girl. Keep chewing, kiddo, said Mr. Beauregarde. Keep right on chewing, baby. This is a great day for the Beauregardes. Our little girl is the first person in the world to have a chewing gum meal. Everybody was watching Violet as she stood there chewing this extraordinary gum. Little Charlie Bucket was staring at her absolutely spellbound, watching her huge rubbery lips as they pressed and unpressed with the chewing, and Grandpa Joe stood beside him, gaping at the girl. Mr. Wonka was wringing his hands and saying, No, 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 it isn't ready for eating. It just isn't right. You mustn't do it. Blueberry pie and cream, shouted Violet. Here it comes. Oh my, it's perfect. It's beautiful. It's exactly as though I'm swallowing it. It's as though I'm chewing and swallowing great big spoonfuls of the most marvelous blueberry pie in the world. Good heavens, girl, shrieked Mrs. Beauregarde, suddenly staring at Violet. What's happening to your nose? Oh, be quiet, Mother. Let me finish, said Violet. It's turning blue, screamed Mrs. Beauregarde. Your nose is turning blue as a blueberry. Your mother is right, shouted Mr. Beauregarde. Your whole nose has gone purple. What do you mean? Said Violet, still chewing away. Your cheeks! They're turning blue as well. So is your chin. Your whole face is turning blue. Spit that gum out at once, ordered Mr. Beauregarde. Mercy save us, yelled Mrs. Beauregarde. The girl's going blue and purple all over. Even her hair is changing color. Violet, you're turning violet. What is happening to you? I told you I hadn't got it quite right, sighed Mr. Wonka, shaking his head. I'll say you haven't, cried Mrs. Beauregard. Just look at the girl now. Everybody was staring at Violet, and what a terrible, peculiar sight she was. Her face and hands and legs and neck, in fact, the skin all over her body, as well as her great big mop of curly hair, had turned a brilliant purplish blue, the color of blueberry juice. It always goes wrong when we come to the dessert, sighed Mr. Wonka. It's the blueberry pie that does it. But I'll get it right one day. You wait and see. Violet, you're swelling up. I feel sick, Violet said. You're swelling up. I feel most peculiar. I'm not surprised, said Mr. Beauregard. Good heavens, girl. You're blowing up like a balloon. Like a blueberry, said Mr. Wonka. Call a doctor. Prick her with a pin, said one of the fathers. Save her, cried her mother, wringing her hands, but there was no saving her now. Her body was swelling up and changing shape at such a rate that within a minute it had turned to nothing less than an enormous, round, blue ball, a gigantic blueberry, in fact, and all that remained of Violet Beauregard herself was a tiny pair of legs and a tiny pair of arms sticking out of the great round fruit and a little head on top. It always happens like that, sighed Wonka. I've tried it 20 times in the testing room on 20 Oompa Loompas, and every one of them finishes up as a blueberry. It's most annoying. I just can't understand it. But I don't want a blueberry for a daughter, yelled Mrs. Beauregard. Put her back to what she was this instant. Mr. Wonka clicked his fingers, and 10 Oompa Loompas appeared immediately at his side. Roll Miss Beauregard into the boat, and take her along to the juicing room at once. The juicing room? What are they going to do there? Squeeze her, said Mr. Wonka. You've got to squeeze the juice out of her immediately. After that, we'll just have to see how she comes out. But don't worry, my dear Mrs. Beauregard. We'll get her repaired if it's the last thing we do. I am sorry about it all. I really am. Already, the 10 Oompa Loompas were rolling the enormous blueberry across the floor of the inventing room toward the door that led to the chocolate river, where the boat was waiting. Mr. and Mrs. Beauregard hurried them, and the rest of the party, including little Charlie Bucket and Grandpa Joe, stood absolutely still and watched them. Listen, whispered Charlie. Listen, Grandpa. The Oompa Loompas in the boat outside are starting to sing. The voices, 100 of them, singing together, came loud and clear into the room. Dear friends, we surely all agree there's almost nothing worse to see than some repulsive little bum who's always chewing gum. It's very near as bad as those who sit around and pick the nose. So please believe us when we say that chewing gum will never pay. This sticky habit's bound to send the chewer to a sticky end. Did any of you ever know a person called Miss Bigelow? This dreadful woman saw no wrong in chewing all day long. She chewed while bathing in the tub. She chewed while dancing at her club. She chewed in church and on the bus. It really was quite ludicrous. And when she couldn't find her gum, she chewed up the linoleum, or anything that happened near a pair of boots, a postman's ear, or other people's underclothes, and once she chewed her boyfriend's nose. She went on chewing till at last her chewing muscles grew so vast that from her face her giant chin stuck out just like a violin. For years and years she chewed away, consuming 50 packs a day, until one summer's eve, alas, a horrid business came to pass. Miss Bigelow went late to bed. For half an hour she lay and read, chewing all the while like some great clockwork crocodile. At last she put her gum away upon a special little tray, and settled back and went to sleep. She managed this by counting sheep. By now, how strange, although she slept, those massive jaws of hers still kept on chewing through the night, even with nothing there to bite. They were, you see, in such a groove they positively had to move. And very grim it was to hear in pitch darkness, loud and clear, this sleeping woman's great big trap, opening and shutting, snap, snap, snap. Faster and faster, chop, chop, chop. The noise went on, it wouldn't stop, until at last her jaws decide to pause and open extra wide. And with the most tremendous chew, they bit the lady's tongue in two. Thereafter, last from chewing gum, Miss Bigelow was always dumb, and spent her life shut up in some disgusting sanatorium. And that is why we'll try so hard to save Miss Violet Beauregard from suffering an equal fate. She's still quite young. It's not too late. Provided she survives the cure. We hope she does. We can't be sure. Chapter 22. Along the Corridor. Well, 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 sighed Mr. Willy Wonka. 2 naughty little children gone, 3 good little children left. I think we'd better get out of this room quickly before we lose anyone else. But Mr. Wonka, cried Charlie Bucket anxiously, will Violet Beauregarde ever be all right again, or will she always be a blueberry? They'll dejuice her in no time flat, declared Wonka. They'll roll her into the dejuicing machine, and she'll come out just as thin as a whistle. But will she still be blue all over? Asked Charlie. She'll be purple, a fine rich purple from head to toe, but there you are, that's what comes from chewing disgusting gum all day. If you think gum is so disgusting, asked Mike Teavee, then why did you make it in your factory? I do wish you wouldn't mumble, said Mr. Wonka. I can't hear a word you're saying. Come on, off we go. Hurry up, follow me, we're going into the corridors again. And so saying, Mr. Wonka scuttled across to the far end of the inventing room and went out through a small secret door hidden behind a lot of pipes and stoves. The 3 remaining children, Veruca Salt, Mike Teavee, and Charlie Bucket, together with their 5 remaining grown-ups, followed after him. Charlie Bucket saw that they were now in the back of those long pink corridors with many other pink corridors leading out of it. Mr. Wonka was rushing along in front, turning left and right, left, right, right, left. Grandpa Joe was saying, "Keep a good hold of my hand, Charlie. It would be terrible to get lost in here." Mr. Wonka was saying, "No time for any more messing about. We'll never get anywhere at the rate we've been going." And on he rushed down the endless pink corridor, with his black top hat perched on the top of his head and his plum-colored velvet coat-tails flying out behind him like a flag in the wind. They passed another door, then another and another. There were doors every 20 paces or so along the corridor now, and they all had something written on them. The strange clanking noises were coming from behind several of them, and delicious smells came wafting through the keyholes, and sometimes little jets of colored steam shot out from the cracks underneath. Grandpa Joe and Charlie were half running and half walking to keep up with Mr. Wonka, but they were able to read what it said on quite a few of the doors as they hurried by. Edible marshmallow pillows, it said on one. "Marshmallow pillows are terrific," shouted Wonka. "They'll be all the rage when I get them into the shops. No time to go in, though, no time to go in." "Lickable wallpaper for nurseries," it said on the next. "Lovely stuff, lickable wallpaper," cried Wonka. "It has pictures of fruits on it, bananas, apples, oranges, grapes, pineapples, strawberries, and snozzberries." "Snozzberries," said Mike Teavee. "Don't interrupt," said Mr. Wonka. "The wallpaper has pictures of all these fruits printed on it, and when you lick the picture of a banana, it tastes of banana, and when you lick a strawberry, it tastes of strawberry, and when you lick a snozzberry, it tastes just exactly like a snozzberry." "But what does a snozzberry taste like?" "You're mumbling again," said Wonka. "Speak louder next time. On we go, hurry up." "Hot ice creams for cold days," it said on the next door. "Extremely useful in winter," said Mr. Wonka, rushing on. "Hot ice cream warms you up no end in freezing weather. It also makes hot ice cubes for putting in hot drinks. Hot ice cubes makes hot drinks hotter." "Cows that give chocolate milk," it said on the next door. "Aw, my pretty little cows," cried Wonka. "How I love those cows. But why can't we see them?" asked Veruca. "Why do we have to go rushing on past all these lovely rooms?" "We shall stop in time," called Mr. Wonka. "Don't be so madly impatient." "Fizzy lifting drinks," it said on the next door. "Oh, these are fabulous," cried Mr. Wonka. "They fill you with bubbles, and the bubbles are full of a special kind of gas, and the gas is so terrifically lifting that it lifts you right off the ground just like a balloon, and up you go until your head hits the ceiling, and there you stay." "But how do you come down again?" asked little Charlie. "You do a burp, of course," said Mr. Wonka. "You do a great, big, long, rude burp, and up comes the gas, and down comes you. But don't drink it outdoors. There's no knowing how high you'll be carried up if you do that. I gave some to an old Oompa Loompa once out the backyard, and he went up, 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 and disappeared out of sight. It was very sad. I never saw him again." "He should have burped," Charlie said. "Of course he should have burped," said Mr. Wonka. "I stood there shouting, 'Burp! Burp, or you'll never come down!' And he didn't, or he couldn't, or wouldn't, I don't know which. Maybe he was too polite. But he must be on the moon by now." And on the next door it said, "Square candies that look round." "Wait!" cried Wonka, skidding suddenly to a halt. "I am very proud of my square candies that look round. Let's take a peek."